We're starting this edition with the most heartwarming news coming in of the day. In a massive boost to India's vaccine drive, the subject expert committee for Central Drugs Control Standard Organization has now recommended Bharat Biotech's COVAXIN for children aged between 2 and 18 years. Now, this is the first Indian vaccine to be approved for use on all children aged between 2 and above. Sources also tell Republic TV that the gap between the two doses could be less as 20 days for children. So what does this essentially mean, especially given the fact that there are fence sitters and across the globe, we are among the few countries which have already given that emergency authorization for vaccines to be given to children between 2 and 18. Joining me on this broadcast is Dr. Nandita, who is the past president of the Federation of and Gynecological Societies of Live of India and consultant Leelavati Hospital, Mumbai, who's joining us live right now. Dr. Nandita, let me first begin by asking you, this news of children being given the vaccine, what does this essentially mean, keeping in mind that we are among the few countries who have taken this step to go ahead and vaccinate the children?
I think it's a fantastic first, and we are seeing that the vaccine is helping in prevention of the disease, reducing the severity of the disease. And the third wave, which was seen in a lot of countries, did cause a lot of problems. Like in America, there was a 5-fold increase in the admission of adolescents and younger kids during the third wave due to coronavirus. And even in UK, 2 to 4% of the children who suffered from COVID had severe symptoms. So I think we need to protect our children, especially before the third wave comes. And this is great news, because what happens is that this is a vulnerable, unprotected, group of patients or group of our society, which if we keep them any longer in the house, there are going to be lots of problems. So I think it's a fabulous news. We ought to really celebrate that, our very own indigenous vaccine, homemade, is the first in the world actually to be approved by the DGCI. And I must applaud the DGCI also to take such decisions. These are very bold decisions. And it's amazing that they have managed to collect the data, get the data analyzed, and give an answer.
Dr. Nandita, just to put this into perspective, because you would still have, in a situation like this, there would be fence sitters, there would be concerns. Let's just put it this way. There would be concerns that parents do have. So what is it that you would like to tell all parents, keeping in mind that many would look into the kind of studies that have been done abroad, the concerns that have essentially been raised? Because I was actually going through an article that was put out by Johns Hopkins, and they were essentially trying to address the concerns that we have seen abroad. Similar kind of concerns could be here also. So what is it that you would like to tell the parents to keep aside the fear-mongering that may actually happen?
You know what? Any vaccine that is given to any child has a side effect. But the side effect is seen in a very, very minuscule amount of patients. So because of that, we should not allow the other children to take it. I think that is unwarranted, completely unwarranted. So I think if your child has had vaccination before and has had no problems, I think it should be all right. But at the same time, definitely, we have to look out for side effects. We have to look out for problems, as we have seen even in the adult population. But majority of the children, I feel, would benefit from this. So I think one should not really worry about it at all.
Dr. Nandita, let me also now address some of these specific concerns when it comes to children, especially given the fact that in the second wave, there have been about 10 to 15% of children who have been infected. In the first phase, that the number was quite lower. So what is the way forward? Do you think this is the best way to basically ensure that children are not infected? Perhaps, various sero surveys that have been done, especially in states like Kerala, for that matter, we've seen the numbers actually going up. Numbers of children getting infected, even in Maharashtra, for that matter. What is it that you would essentially say when it comes to, of children getting infected, and perhaps this is the only way forward to ensure that, children are safe?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very relevant question which you've asked. We have seen in the past that children are getting affected, and we have seen that nearly 2 to 4% or 5% of the children have long-term consequences, like, tiredness, inability to concentrate, fatigue, etc. And also there are side effects of being, isolated, being in a closed environment, not being able to interact with people. So children are having problems with all of it, not only the disease and its sequelae, but also, ways to prevent the disease, which is social distancing, etc. So we need to really, I feel, conquer this once and for all. And we have seen in the adult population that the vaccination has helped. In fact, I would like to quote the example of Israel. Israel started vaccinating its children somewhere in June, July, and they have really vaccinated nearly 45% of its 12 plus children. And now they've tried to vaccinate even the younger population. And they have succeeded. In fact, their 70 plus is 90% vaccinated. So they are showing us the way forward. And I think after Israel, our country has taken on a big stride. I think it's a very positive step, because this disease has long-term sequelae, has problems. Even when we are trying to prevent it, it has mental issues, it has other problems. So we need to conquer it faster. And looking at it as I see it, I think masking, hygiene, and vaccine. Small children, you can't tell them, they cannot understand, they cannot comprehend certain things. So you have to vaccinate them. That is the way probably we'll be able to help them out.
Well, Dr. Nandita, I'll request you to stay on, as on this broadcast we also have Dr. Arvinder Singh Soy, who's joining us. He's the chairman of the Institute of Liver Transplantation from Medanta, joining us live from the national capital. Dr. Arvinder, thank you very much for joining us on this broadcast. We also have Dr. Nandita. What we'll try and do is that over the next couple of minutes, also take some questions from our guests as well as viewers who would be joining us, because there are a lot of concerns. And the idea right now is to ensure that if at all any parent has any sort of concerns, they can get in touch, and we'll try and put those questions to our experts joining us on this broadcast. Dr. Arvinder, let me just begin. I was discussing this with Dr. Nandita with regards to concerns. The reason why I'm focusing on the concern areas right now, because in terms of a larger picture abroad, we have seen the kind of concerns that have been raised in the United Kingdom also, and I was going through certain articles, Dr. Arvinder. What the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are essentially talking about is that since April 2021, there have been more than 1,000 reports of cases of myocarditis. It's an inflammation of the heart muscle. And there have been certain concerns that have essentially been raised. Would you say that with the clinical trials taking place into three groups, divided into three groups, it's safer for children to be vaccinated at this point? And I want you to first address that, and then we'll perhaps break it down to further areas of concern.
I agree. First of all, I agree with the other guests that it's absolutely welcome news, because as the schools and colleges open, children are now obviously going to be the most vulnerable group to contract COVID. So they are a risk for themselves. And since we are 40% children, basically the 40% of the population in India is children, they could also be responsible for sparking of the third wave. So it is really important to protect our children. And parents will obviously have some concerns on the negative side. There may be some vaccine hesitancy, but they need to understand that eventually the incidence of side effects, especially with COVAXIN, there hasn't been that many reports of myocarditis. In the West, the myocarditis has happened mainly with the mRNA vaccines, but not with COVAXIN. Although we don't have the complete data as of now, but we are given to understand that the safety and immunogenicity of COVAXIN in children has been exactly the same as in adults. Now, the formal approval by the DCGI hasn't come through yet, and we hope with the formal approval, the data will be made public. But as far as I understand, this is going to be safe for all children from 2 to 18 years, and parents must absolutely protect their children and also protect the society. We must all go for vaccinating our children. And I also agree that it's not possible to enforce COVID-appropriate behavior among them. So this is the best way to protect them.
Well, in fact, we have our first caller right now on this broadcast. Let me go across to Srilekha Debnath, who's calling us from Mumbai. Srilekha, go ahead and ask your question.
Good evening, Shravan. It's such a wonderful feeling to be live on Republic, and a very good evening to all the esteemed panel members. I wish to ask that in past few days, we have been hearing that in countries like USA, UK, they are giving vaccines to the teenagers. So my question is that what is the advantage of taking the COVAXIN as against those vaccines?
Dr. Soy, would you like to take this question?
Okay. So first of all, the only the vaccines that are approved for children can be used in India. And after Zydus, this is the next vaccine that has been approved. Zydus is the vaccine that's been produced in India, and 3 doses of that vaccine have been approved for children between 12 and 18 before that in August. And now we have COVAXIN for 2 to 18. So we don't actually have the option of the mRNA vaccines that have been given to children in the West. But having said that, I recently happened to be abroad in the West, and I did find that all the children were actually getting vaccinated. In fact, in schools and universities, it has become requirement for all the children to get fully vaccinated. So in India, COVAXIN and Zydus are the only approved ones. And I would strongly recommend and implore the parents to make sure that their children are protected with vaccination.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Soy, as well as Dr. Nandita, for putting this into perspective. Undoubtedly, this is a major relief for especially parents who are sending their children to schools right now. And perhaps doctors on this broadcast have also sent across a very strong message that this is perhaps the best way to protect the children. And this kind of a step that has been taken with the emergency use authorization of COVAXIN coming in at a good time. Let's try and do our best to prevent the third wave.